Hey everybody, welcome to the YS Podcast. My name is Adam McLean. We're going to kick off this week's show with a tip from Scott Erickson.
So the question is, how do we incorporate art into our gatherings, our spaces, or with our youth groups and things like that? Let's start with the question before that is like, where does art come from? I mean, if you think about it, art really comes from story or experiences. You know, somebody gets their heart broken, they write a song about it. Somebody sees something beautiful, they want to try to recreate it. Somebody loves something or sees something beautiful and they make a dance about it. So, you know, that's where the heart of art is coming from, is out of a story, an experience, a thought, or a concept. So before you even are thinking about like, let's make something, you got to start to think, what are the stories of our group? Like, so if it's about your youth group, what is the story about your group? You know, what are the events that have really shaped your youth group? Is it like the neighborhood that you live in? I mean, have you put things to prayer and has God answered them? Those are significant events that are building faith into your students. And so a great way that art can fit into that is like creating something to remember that, like an Ebenezer or a memorial. That's what God had people do in the Old Testament. It was like, hey, I'm taking you on this journey, stop, make this, remember, okay, keep going. So art can be a great way for that. Now, there's lots of different things that you can do with your students. You know, let's look at the art around us here. You know, a lot of it's not going to be the stuff that you're going to see at museums and stuff, because that just takes a long time to foster real talent. So that's why some of these pictures, they're great. They're really great. They are. The kids put time into it. But they're not, they're maybe amateurish is the way you describe it. So ways that you can think about working with your kids is, you know, if you just give them pencils and paper, you know, who knows what they're going to come up with. But you could sit with some of them, some that you maybe find artistic, and be like, hey, remember that time that we were on that mission trip and we prayed and God answered that prayer? How could we depict that? And then you can go from there in a lot of different ways. You can use cameras, photography. You know, most kids have cell phones, so you could like give a mission to your kids and say, go take a picture of something and then text it to me or email it to me, and then make a collage that's about that idea. It's in using murals, or if you want to make something in your youth room, it's totally cool to find images and then make them on an overhead transparency and then put it up on a wall and then copy that out, make some lines, and then paint it in. That's what professionals do. When I make images, I pose my friends and take pictures of them and then use those as guides. So it's okay to like gather guides or things that you want, or you know, ask the kids to bring in art or look at art that you really like and then use that to help model the designs that you want to make. But the thing to think about, you know, and I know that you're youth pastors, and so some of you have really nice youth rooms, some of you have garages that you like, here's the garage, it's your new youth room. So, but think about how you want to make your space. Your space is going to tell something to the kids who are coming in for the first time about what you believe, what you value. And so I know probably you guys have posters or whatever up on the wall, but really think, hey, how can our space represent who we are? How can it tell the stories that we are? If you have something up there and kids come in and be like, what's that? And you can say, you know, in our group, God really answered this prayer in this way. It tells a story. You're testifying to what God has done with you. So art fits in that way. YS has got great things. So yeah, that's a way that there's lots of resources to check it out. So check it out. Involve more art. Your kids love it. So let them at it. Thank you.
Next up on the show is Brock Morgan, and he's got this devotional to share with you.
Hey, I'm a youth worker in Oregon, and last weekend we took our high school students on a retreat, and we took them through the book of Titus. And I love the book of Titus because you have two guys being discipled by Paul, Timothy and Titus. These two young guys just starting out in ministry, longing to do something, you know, great with their lives. And so we take our students last weekend away and we open up the book of Titus, and Paul describes Crete, where Titus is called to go and minister. It's this island off the coast, and Paul describes the kind of people that Titus will be ministering to, and it says this: even one of their own prophets has said, Cretans are always liars, evil brutes, and lazy gluttons, And he says in verse 13, this testimony is true. Like, these are the kind of people you're going to work with. And then he gives them some insight in the next chapter, in chapter 2 of Titus, as to how he could see transformation happen in their life. I don't know about you, but for me, I am longing personally for transformation. I'm longing for my students to be changed. And he says a secret here in chapter 2, verse 11. He says this, for the grace of God that brings salvation has appeared to all men. It teaches us to say no to ungodliness and worldly passions, and to live self-controlled, and my page just blew open, self-controlled, upright, and godly lives in this present age. He's saying, Paul is saying to Titus, listen, preach grace. Grace changes us. Grace actually teaches us to say no, and I long to be able to say no to myself, to be marked by self-discipline. And I want that in my life to be passed to my students' lives. I want them to have the ability in this culture to actually to be able to live differently, to live out this truth that grace changes us, to receive something that you don't deserve. And I look at my life and I'm like, man, I don't deserve grace. And because of grace, Jesus saying yes to me, I can say no to myself and yes to him and follow him. And so I encourage you to this day to let grace just kind of wash over you. We've all done things. I've done horrible things. And I look at my life and I'm like, man, how does God actually believe in me? He actually believes in me. He thinks I can do it. And he thinks you can do it. That's grace. Amazing grace. Let that wash over you today, and take that to your kids. Grace will teach them to say no.
Hey, thanks for watching the show this week. As always, I want to invite you to connect with me. Send me an email at adam@youthspecialties.com, or look me up on Facebook or MySpace or Twitter or any of those other crazy things that you do when your boss is not looking. I know about them because I do them all the time too. Hey, your ministry matters. We know you don't hear that enough, but we want you to hear from us. From our heart to yours, your ministry matters deeply to the parents, to the students, but especially to the heart of God. Thanks for what you do, and we'll catch you next week.